Kai Henderson had never stepped foot in a room where the champagne cost more than his monthly rent, until tonight. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the ballroom, adjusting the ill-fitting borrowed tux that clung too tight at the shoulders. Crystal chandeliers glittered above him like stars, and a string quartet played something elegant he couldn't name. The gala was packed with people who clearly belonged their men in designer suits, women dripping in diamonds, servers carrying silver trays with food he didn't dare touch. "He wasn't supposed to be here. Daddy, my feet are tired," his daughter Grace whispered, tugging his sleeve. She looked like a little princess in her hand-me-down pink dress, her dark curls bouncing as she tried to keep up with the crowd. "I know, baby girl." "Just a little longer, okay," he said, scooping her into his arms. The only reason he was here was because his boss at the auto shop had scored 2 last-minute tickets to the annual Preston Foundation Gala and offered them to Kai like it was a joke. "Might help you land a better job, who knows," he'd said. Kai didn't know what he'd expected, but it sure wasn't this. He tried to stay invisible, hovering by a tall marble column, watching people he couldn't relate to while holding his daughter close. It was a mistake coming here. The second he found the exit, he was leaving. That was when he saw her. A woman in a sleek black dress stood across the ballroom, a glass of champagne in one hand, her other hand gesturing as she spoke with 2 sharply dressed men. Her posture was effortless, confident. Everyone around her seemed to hang on her every word. She laughed bright, real, not forced like the others, and then she looked at him. It was like time hiccuped, her eyes narrowed slightly, curious. She took a step toward him, then another, heels clicking softly on the marble floor. Kai's pulse tapped faster. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked, stopping in front of him with a half smile. Kai blinked. Was it that obvious?" She tilted her head. "You're holding your daughter like she's your armor." He looked down at Grace, who had her head tucked into his neck. "Yeah, well, she's my everything." The woman's expression softened, then her eyes flicked back to his. "I'm Kaia Dalton," he nodded slowly. "Kai Henderson." "And this is Grace." Kaia smiled at the little girl. "Hi, Grace, pretty name." "Thank you," Grace mumbled shyly before hiding her face again. Kaia looked back at Kai. "So, what brings you to the Preston Gala?" He scratched the back of his neck. "Honestly, my boss gave me the tickets. Thought I could network or something. I fix cars, not whatever this is." "Cars?" Her eyes lit up. "Well, that's refreshing. Everyone here's either a hedge fund manager or a plastic surgeon." "Yeah, I figured," he said, chuckling under his breath. "I've never felt more out of place. You're actually the most interesting person I've met all night." He raised a brow. "You serious?" She grinned. "Dead serious." A server appeared beside her, offering a tray of hors d'oeuvres. She took 2 and handed one to Kai without asking. "Try it." It's smoked duck on truffle toast. He took a bite and tried not to grimace. "Tastes like money." She laughed a real, full laugh that made her look younger. "Exactly." For the next hour they talked about everything. She asked about Grace, and he told her about raising his daughter alone after her mom left when she was a baby. He told her about the long hours at the garage and how Grace loved drawing cars more than dolls. And Kaia. She was sharp, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth for someone who looked like she belonged on the cover of a fashion magazine. What he didn't know, what she didn't tell him, was that she wasn't just a guest. She owned the foundation. Every person in the ballroom answered to her. Every check written tonight had her name on it. She was worth over $4 billion. But tonight, she just wanted to be Kaia. Not the billionaire, not the business mogul. Just a woman talking to a man who made her heartbeat do something it hadn't done in years. As the night wore on, Kai shifted Grace in his arms. "I should probably get her home. She's out cold." Kaia hesitated. "Wait a second." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small card. "This is the address to an event I'm hosting at the Children's Museum next weekend. It's private for donors and kids. Grace might love it. You should come." Kai stared at the card. "Are you sure? I mean, I don't really fit in with this crowd." She stepped closer. "You fit in just fine with me." His breath caught. Her eyes were warm, sincere. This wasn't a pity invite. "She meant it." He nodded slowly. "Okay, we'll be there." She smiled. "Good." As he turned to leave, she called after him. "Hey, Kai," he turned. "You really are the most real person I've met in a long time." He gave her a small smile. You're not so bad yourself, Kaia. She watched him walk out of the ballroom, her heart thudding louder than it had in years. She had no idea what she'd just started, and neither did he. The Children's Museum was unlike anything Kai had ever seen. The walls exploded with color murals of astronauts, jungle animals, and oceans wrapped around the massive building. Inside, it was a wonderland of interactive exhibits. A miniature grocery store, a kid-sized construction site, and a planetarium with glowing stars embedded in the ceiling. Grace clung to his hand, wide-eyed and breathless, her little sneakers squeaking on the polished floors. "Daddy, look, they have a rocket ship you can sit in," Kai let out a low whistle. "This place is wild." The event wasn't crowded, maybe 30 or 40 people total. Everyone wore name tags and sipped from glass tumblers filled with cucumber water. There were kids playing everywhere, and adults casually chatting near display tables with banners showcasing education initiatives and community programs. He spotted Kaia near the back, crouched beside a little boy struggling to stack blocks. She was wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair pulled into a braid over one shoulder. There was no trace of the sleek, high society woman from the Gala. Here, she looked like someone who actually belonged in a place filled with messy paint stations and glitter-covered tables. Grace tugged his sleeve. "Can I go play, Daddy?" He glanced around. "Yeah, just stay where I can see you." She took off toward the art corner, already elbow-deep in a tub of foam shapes before he could finish his sentence. Kaia stood and met his eyes. "You made it," she said, walking over. He nodded, glancing around. "This is incredible." "I thought it'd be, I dunno, stiff, but it's actually fun." "That's the point," she said, shrugging as she handed him a lanyard with his name on it. "I fund the museum's outreach programs. Today's for families who usually can't afford admission. It's one of the only days we keep it closed to the public. I didn't realize you were so involved with this kind of stuff. I'm not interested in writing checks and disappearing," she said simply. "If I'm going to make a difference, I want to see it." He looked at her, more curious than ever. "What made you start this?" Her gaze shifted toward the play area. "My parents were too busy making money to notice I existed. I grew up with nannies and appointments, not real conversations. I figured if I ever had the kind of resources they did, I'd use them differently." He tilted his head. "And you have those resources now, I'm guessing." "You could say that," she said, eyes dancing with quiet amusement. "I sit on a few boards, run a few companies." "How many's a few?" "Too many to enjoy properly," she said under her breath. A volunteer approached and leaned toward her. "Kaia, they're ready for the story circle," she nodded. "Got it." She turned to Kai. "You and Grace should come. We're reading Rosie Rebuilds the World. You'll like it." He hesitated. "You're reading?" "Oh, I do voices," she said with mock seriousness. "It's a whole production." He followed her to the reading nook, where Grace was already curled up on a beanbag chair. Kaia sat down in front of the children and opened the book. And when she read animated and expressive, her voice rising and falling with each twist of the story, it wasn't just the kids who were captivated. Kai couldn't stop watching her. Afterward, the kids dispersed, and Kaia came to sit beside him on the edge of the play zone. She leaned back on her hands, face flushed from performing. "You're good with them," he said. She glanced at him. "You think so?" "Yeah, you didn't sound like someone who grew up with nannies." She laughed under her breath. "I've had to learn giving money is easy. Showing up is harder." He looked at her sideways. "Why'd you invite me here, really?" Her smile faded just a little. "Because I liked talking to you, and because you didn't look at me the way most people do." "How's that? Like I'm a target, or a trophy? Or a stepping stone? You think I'm not any of those things?" She shook her head. "You looked at me like a person, just Kaia." He absorbed that quietly. "I don't know what you think this is," he said slowly, "but I'm not the kind of guy who fits into your world." Kaia's voice was calm. "Maybe you don't have to. You say that now, but I've seen what happens when people from different worlds try to mix. One side always gets swallowed." "You think I'm trying to swallow you?" He studied her. "I think you're used to being in control. And I think I'm used to having none." Kaia didn't flinch. "Maybe we're both overdue for something different." Grace came running over, face smeared with green paint. "Daddy, I made a spaceship." Kai knelt. "Let's see it, baby." She held up a lopsided paper sculpture and he grinned. "It's perfect." Kaia crouched beside them, That's some serious engineering, Grace beamed. You can have it. Kaia blinked, touched. Thank you, I'll put it on my desk. Kai watched her accept the messy gift like it was priceless. He stood slowly, heart twisting. I should get her home. She's gonna crash in the car, Kaia nodded. Will I see you again? He paused. I don't know, she didn't press. Just gave a small nod, then turned to Grace. Thanks for sharing your spaceship with me. Grace hugged her without hesitation. Bye, Miss Kaia. As they walked out into the cool evening air, Kai held Grace a little tighter. He didn't belong in Kaia's world, but for the first time he wasn't sure he wanted to stay in his. Kaia hadn't stopped thinking about him. Not during the board meeting in London, where she negotiated a multi-million-dollar merger. Not during the private dinner in Geneva with a tech CEO begging for her investment. Not even as her jet touched down in New York after a 12-day trip that would have thrilled her a year ago. Instead, her mind kept circling back to Kai and Grace. That night at the museum had left a mark. She'd gone home with a wrinkled paper spaceship in her handbag and a quiet ache in her chest she hadn't felt in years. She'd placed the little sculpture on her desk, beside her framed degrees and polished awards. It didn't belong there, but somehow, it grounded her in a way nothing else did. She hadn't heard from him since. She told herself it was fine, that she had enough going on. But when she saw him again, unexpectedly, on a Tuesday morning outside a corner coffee shop in Brooklyn, her breath caught like a fist in her throat. He was wiping Grace's face with a napkin, crouched beside her on the sidewalk while she held a chocolate croissant in both hands, grinning with crumbs on her nose. Kaia stepped out of the town car without thinking. Kai, he looked up, startled. Kaia, Grace's eyes lit up. Hi again, Kaia knelt beside them. You've got a little something right there, she said, tapping her own nose. Grace giggled and wiped it with the back of her hand. I didn't expect to see you here, Kai said, standing slowly. This isn't exactly your part of the city, Kaia shrugged. It is today. I was meeting with a community developer 2 blocks over. They're converting an old lot into a public garden. He glanced toward the sleek black car now idling at the curb. That yours, she nodded. Driver's probably wondering if I've lost my mind. He looked away. You haven't, she studied him. You live around here, couple blocks up, he said. Grace and I come here before school sometimes. The owner sneaks her extra whipped cream. Grace raised her cup proudly. I got 2 today, Kaia smiled. Well deserved, he hesitated. You want to sit for a minute, she looked at her watch. I have a call in 30 minutes, but yeah, I'd like that. They found a small table tucked under a striped umbrella. Grace climbed into a chair between them, still sipping her cocoa. Kaia leaned her elbows on the table. You working today? Late shift, he said. Someone called out, so I picked up the hours, still at the garage, for now. She looked at him. But you want something different. He gave a short breath through his nose. Want's not the issue, it's about time and risk. I can't afford to chase dreams when I've got a 6-year-old who needs dinner every night. She studied him. You ever thought about starting something of your own? He laughed softly. You mean like a business? Sure, all the time, but I've got no capital, no connections, no backup plan. Just a head full of ideas and a kid who counts on me. Kaia leaned back. What kind of ideas? He hesitated, then said, a mobile repair service. I've noticed how many people can't get their cars to a shop. Moms with kids, older folks, people stuck on the side of the road. I've been sketching out a business model, even got a name for it. Her eyes sparked. What is it, street savior? That's actually brilliant, he shrugged. Doesn't matter. I don't have the kind of money it takes to outfit a van, get licensed, market it right. She tilted her head. What if you did? He stiffened. I'm not asking you for anything, Kaia. I didn't say you were. I'm just asking what if. He looked at her guarded. You don't know me. You don't know if I'd follow through. I know you built a spaceship out of paper with your daughter. And I know you're not the kind of man who takes shortcuts. She didn't look away. Neither did he. Across the table, Grace leaned her head against Kai's arm. I'm sleepy. He glanced at her, then back at Kaia. I should get her to school. Kaia stood with them. Let me at least give you my number this time. He hesitated, then handed her his phone. She typed it in and handed it back. You don't have to call, but if you ever want to talk business or anything else, he nodded. Thanks. As he turned to go, Kaia said, Kai, he stopped. I wasn't looking for any of this either. He gave a quiet smile, then walked away with Grace in his arms. her cocoa cup still clutched in one hand. Kaia stood on the sidewalk long after the car pulled away, heart thudding with something dangerously close to hope. She didn't know what was happening between them, but for the first time in years, she wanted to find out. The first time Kai stepped into the Midtown high-rise, he had to stop just inside the marble lobby to make sure he hadn't walked into the wrong building. It didn't feel like any place he belonged. The ceiling soared 30 feet up, with a chandelier dripping crystals over a sleek concierge desk. A wall of glass overlooked Central Park in the distance. He adjusted the collar of his clean button-down borrowed from his neighbor, who was an inch shorter and 10 pounds lighter, and tried not to sweat through the fabric. He gave the receptionist his name. She smiled like she'd been expecting him for weeks and directed him to the top floor. By the time the elevator doors opened, his nerves were a chorus in his chest. Kaia was waiting for him. Her office looked nothing like he expected. It wasn't cold or clinical. It was filled with color books stacked along the walls, abstract art, a large window with sunlight pouring across the dark wood floor. She stood beside her desk, not behind it, in dark slacks and a navy blouse, hair pinned up in a loose twist. "I'm glad you came," she said. Kai nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. Still not sure if this is a job interview or a trap. Kaia smiled, but there was something in her expression, something she hadn't shown him before. Not amusement, not curiosity, it was closer to care. "I asked you here because I believe in street savior," she said, "and because I want to make sure you know exactly what I'm offering." Kai stepped into the room slowly. "I'm listening." "I don't want to hand you a check," she said. "That's not how I operate. I want to invest. Not just in the business, but in you. I have a team that can help you set up the legal side, build the platform, secure the permits. You'd be the owner, you'd run it, but you wouldn't be alone." He studied her. Why? Kaia didn't answer right away. She walked to the corner of the room and picked up something from a low shelf. It was the paper spaceship Grace had made, now framed behind glass. "I've built 100 companies," she said, "but none of them have made me feel the way I did holding this." Kai's voice was quiet. "It was just a kid's craft." "No," Kaia said, "it was your daughter's vision and your influence." He exhaled slowly. "I'm not used to people believing in me. Then let me be the first." He looked at the frame, then back at her. "If I say yes, this changes everything." Kaia nodded once. "That's the idea. What if I fail? Then you fail forward, and I'll still be here." Something in him cracked open. He crossed the room and took the seat across from her. She sat no desk between them now. "I'll need time to figure out logistics," he said. "I can't quit the garage until I know Grace has what she needs." "You won't have to," she said. "We'll phase it in. You can start part-time, build your client list, we'll get you a van." He let out a breath. "You've thought this through." "I've thought about very little else." He looked at her, searching. "This isn't just business." "No," she said. "It's not." Kai leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I don't know how to do this part." "Which part?" "Any of it. Being connected to someone like you. Letting myself want more." Kaia's voice was softer now. "What do you want, Kai?" He didn't answer right away. Then, finally, "I want a future where Grace sees me do something that matters. I want to wake up and not feel like I'm drowning, and I want—" His voice caught. Kaia waited. "I want to be brave enough to let someone care about me again." She reached across the table and took his hand. "You already are." That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't need to. The next week was a blur of planning. Meetings with branding consultants, city officials, tech developers. Kaia's assistant coordinated everything. Kai showed up to all of it, sometimes in his grease-stained coveralls, sometimes in the same button-down, his notepad full of ideas and questions. Grace stayed with his neighbor during the longer meetings, but she came with him to the unveiling of the van. It was white and silver, with Street Savior painted in bold navy on the sides. The back was outfitted with a full mobile repair station. Inside, there was a fold-down bench and a small screen where Grace could sit while he worked. She squealed when she saw it. "This is ours?" she asked, eyes wide. "It is," Kai said, voice thick. Kaia crouched beside her. "Your dad made this happen." Grace looked up at him. "You're like a superhero." He blinked hard. "Nah, baby girl, I just fix things. That's what superheroes do." Kaia looked at him then, her expression unguarded. That evening, after the ribbon cutting, after the crowd dispersed and the cameras disappeared, Kai found Kaia standing alone beside the van, her heels in one hand. "I should probably say thank you," he said. She turned, eyes catching the last of the sunset. "You don't have to. I want to." He stepped closer. "You didn't just give me a business, you gave me a second chance. You gave it to yourself," she said. "I just cleared the path." He took her hands, his voice steady now. "Kaia, I don't care about the money or the building or the van. I care about what this means, about what you are to me." Her breath caught. "I love you," he said. "I didn't expect to, I didn't think I could, but you showed up. Again and again, and now I can't imagine my life without you in it." She stepped into him, hands pressing against his chest. "I love you too," she whispered, "even when I tried not to." He kissed her then, real, deep, and completely certain. Months later, their wedding was small but beautiful, a rooftop garden overlooking the city. Grace carried a basket of white petals and wore a crown of silk flowers. Kai stood beside Kaia in a tailored navy suit, his hand in hers, his eyes never leaving her face. They exchanged vows under the open sky, surrounded by people who had watched them build something out of nothing. Afterward, Kaia slipped off her heels and danced barefoot with Grace, spinning her in circles while Kai watched with a heart so full he didn't know how it fit in his chest. He had walked into a gala thinking he didn't belong. And somehow, he'd walked out with the love of a woman who turned his entire world into something extraordinary, not because she was a billionaire, but because she really saw him and never looked away. The first time Kai hosted a street savior community event, the turnout nearly overwhelmed him. It wasn't just the families lined up around the corner, or the local mechanic schools eager to partner, or the single moms who brought homemade cookies as thanks. It was the sense of something bigger, something rooted. He stood on the blacktop of a Brooklyn elementary school parking lot, surrounded by folding tables, tool displays, and a food truck Kaia had insisted on sponsoring herself, serving warm empanadas and lemonade to anyone who stopped by. Kai moved through the crowd with purpose, checking the mobile van setups, greeting the new hires, 3 of them already on part-time schedules while they trained. He wore the navy polo with the Street Savior logo stitched over the heart. Grace had designed the logo herself. Kaia had it digitized and embroidered on all the uniforms. "You good over here?" he asked one of the younger techs, a wiry kid named Darnell who had just replaced a headlight for a grandmother in a wheelchair. Darnell nodded. "Yeah, boss." "She cried when I told her it was free." Kai clapped him on the shoulder. "Keep that energy." He turned as Kaia came toward him, holding a clipboard and wearing aviator sunglasses that made her look more like a movie star than a board member. She was dressed down in jeans and a white tee, with her hair in a lazy braid and a pair of spotless sneakers she'd claimed were function over fashion, though he'd seen the designer label peeking out when she crossed her legs. "I spoke with the principal," she said, flipping the page. "They're open to letting us host monthly fix-it days in the lot, as long as we keep it family-centered." Kai gave a low whistle. "Monthly, you realize that's going to double our load." "I'm aware," she said. "That's why I spoke to the grant committee yesterday." "We're approved to expand the fleet," he blinked. "Already." "I don't wait around," he grinned. "No, you really don't," she nudged his side. "Also, I bought you something," he raised a brow. "That's dangerous." She pulled something from the tote bag slung over her shoulder and handed it to him. It was a leather notebook, thick, with his initials stamped in gold on the bottom corner. "I figured you should have something better than whatever scrap paper you've been using," she said. "You talk like a CEO now. It's time you write like one." Kai turned it over in his hands, touched. "Thanks." "It's more than a notebook." "I know." Grace came bounding across the lot, face flushed with excitement. "Daddy, they let me fix a tire. I used the jack and everything. It was so cool." Kai crouched to her level. "You did? Was it heavy?" She nodded proudly. "But Miss Penny helped me." "I think I want to be a mechanic when I grow up." Kaia leaned down. "Or an engineer, or an inventor, or an astronaut who fixes her own spaceship." Grace giggled. "Can I be all 3? "Absolutely," Kaia said. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the lot, the crowd began to thin. Tables were folded, tools packed, and volunteers hugged before heading off. Kai stayed behind to sweep the area while Grace helped Kaia gather the leftover flyers. He paused when he saw Kaia lifting a box that was clearly too heavy for her. Don't even think about it, he said, crossing the lot. I've carried heavier things, she argued. Yeah, like corporate empires, not boxes of brake pads. He took the box from her, setting it aside before pulling her close. She settled into the curve of his arm without hesitation. This life feels unreal sometimes, he murmured. That's because it is, she said. You built something that didn't exist before. You changed lives, including mine. He touched her cheek. I didn't expect to be the kind of man who had this. You always were, she said. You just needed someone to remind you. They stood like that for a moment, the quiet settling around them. Grace ran past them chasing a paper airplane, her laughter echoing through the lot. Later that evening, after Grace had been tucked into bed, her new toolset lined up at the foot of her mattress, Kai found Kaia on the balcony of their shared apartment overlooking the city skyline. It had taken months to merge their lives, but when it happened seamlessly. He'd sold his old place and moved into hers, though it didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like theirs. She was barefoot, sipping from a mug, her gaze fixed on the lights below. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Imagine where we'll be in 5 years, he whispered. She leaned into him. Where do you see us? Still here, he said. Maybe in a house with a backyard where Grace can build rockets, maybe with a second van in the fleet, maybe with another little one running around. She turned slowly. You want more kids with you? Yeah. I want all of it, Kaia smiled, a softness he'd only ever seen when they were alone. You sure you're ready for midnight feedings again? He brushed her hair back. I'll take every sleepless night if it means waking up beside you. She kissed him then, deeply, like she was sealing something eternal. The next morning, the news broke in the business world that Kaia Dalton had stepped down from 2 of her board positions to focus on philanthropic ventures and personal life. It sent waves through the press, but she didn't care. For the first time in her life, she wasn't chasing power. She was building something real. On their 1-year wedding anniversary, Kai surprised her with a dinner on the rooftop where they'd first said their vows. The table was set with candles, fairy lights, and a tiny vase holding a single painted paper flower, Grace's latest creation. As they ate, Kaia pulled something from her bag. What's that? He asked. She slid a small envelope across the table. He opened it and pulled out a sonogram photo. He froze. Kaia. She nodded, eyes glistening. We're having a baby. He stood so fast his chair tipped. He came around the table, kneeling in front of her, his hand pressed flat to her stomach. She laughed through her tears. It's early, but I couldn't wait to tell you. He looked up, voice thick. I didn't know I could love anyone more than I already love you, but I do, right now. In this moment, she kissed his forehead. Then brace yourself, we're just getting started. And they were together. They raised Grace with laughter and late-night talks on the balcony. They taught her the value of kindness, of work, of possibility. They welcomed their son, Ellie, on a rainy Tuesday morning, and Kai held him with the same reverence he'd once used to hold his dreams. Street Savior expanded to 3 cities. Kaia went on to develop a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs from underserved communities. Using Kai's model as the cornerstone, they never looked back. Because they didn't have to, they were home, in each other, in their family. In the life they'd built not from wealth or legacy, but from love that had rewritten every rule they'd once known. And they lived, truly, happily ever after.